Welcome to The Screen Queen, the show where I'll be talking about your favorite TV show or your favorite movie. You'll just have to listen to find out. This is your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello, my little gremlins and goblins, and welcome back to The Screen Queen, where this is the month with the scares that care. And I find it very funny to mention that for my tagline, because that is the best way to sum up what Gravity Falls is. Well, I would say one of the definitions. Gravity Falls has been one of the most interesting shows that we've had in the entire history of Disney. Disney's come a long way where there's been a big battle with censorship. I've mentioned a couple of Disney movies that had to stop a certain inclusion into the films due to the way that it was influencing children. Like Pocahontas had to stop racist remarks. Hunchback of Notre Dame had to stop any words of cursing, so anything like hell, damn, that's out of there. Atlantis stopped characters that were depicted with cigarettes or firearms. So since 2002, Disney has had to be very limited on what they can do. Most of the stuff that was excluded is, not too bad. No one's really going to miss characters that shoot guns, smoke cigarettes, say curse words, or say racist antics. But Gravity Falls came along and produced a different type of maturity that divided a lot of people. The best way that I explain what Gravity Falls is it's like it's supernatural for kids. The funny parallel of siblings that encounter paranormal activities, no pun intended, and find out the secrets within this town. Honestly, the way Gravity Falls did for 2 seasons did way better than the 15 years of Supernatural. Not gunning for the Winchesters, but if you think about it, Gravity Falls knew how to play on the supernatural storyline in a way that didn't feel like it was getting stretched out. So for clarification's sake, I would say there are quotation marks around horror for talking about Gravity Falls in the Halloween series. It is not really a horror show, but it falls in the same realm of something like Goosebumps or Courage the Cowardly Dog, that it has scary themes, but it's not meant to be terrifying. It's nice that there's a way that we can make, well, like I said, the scares that care. But I do find it incredibly ironic for the fact that it is the second episode of the Halloween series that is an animated show, just like last year with Courage the Cowardly Dog serving as the second episode for the Halloween series. I even debated putting it back in the box, but I'm like, there's no way that I could ever get that same outcome again. Like, that is one of those, 1 in a million chances that it would happen, and I decided, hey, why not roll with it? It has to be fate to talk about another animated horror series for children. And that doesn't get talked about enough. So I'm glad that the fate of my random lottery system spit out Gravity Falls, because it is a wonderful show to talk about. I actually just finished a second rerun of it, and no matter how many times I've watched Gravity Falls, I always end up missing something the first time, and I get to have that experience over and over and over again. So, before I gush and go on about this spooky series for kids, I'm sure there are some listeners that don't know what Gravity Falls is, and that's okay. Gravity Falls is under a certain kind of radar that just didn't really get there until, recently. Gravity Falls came out in 2012 and ran until 2016. The show begins in, Gravity Falls, as these two 12-year-old twins named Mabel and Dipper Pines spend the summer with their great uncle, Stanford Pines. So, Dipper is more on the skepticism side. He loves the idea of learning more and is not afraid to challenge with questions. Mabel, on the other hand, you give her a grappling hook, she's a happy camper. She lives in this world of sunshine, rainbows, having no problems with anything in life, and has a very positive outlook that's not toxic positivity. And they get to know a lot of the workers at the famous Mystery Shack, often called the Mystery Hack, with how the S always falls down, to let you know, yeah, some of the stuff in here, despite how supernatural it is, it's also a scam and a sham, which really does go hand in hand. Did not mean for that to rhyme, but here we go. And they get to know the top worker named Seuss, who is a lovable little loaf. He just loves to be there. He has a great morale for life. And there's Wendy Corduroy, who is the most badass woman since Kita from Atlantis to ever grace the screens. From the get-go, Dipper sees a lot of bizarreness in Gravity Falls, and he starts to make some questions about what's going on here, and those questions come within the first couple of seconds where they're getting chased by a giant monster. And this really feeds into the story so well to work up to why in the world are they running away in a golf cart by a giant monster. There are so many questions from the get-go, and you get to learn through Dipper and Mabel as every episode has a new supernatural theme. The show never really slows down when it comes to creating different idealisms on mysticism or mysteries or myths, old folk tales, old wives' tales. Anything you can think of that you possibly heard as a child is depicted in this with the same way that we heard it as a child. That is the true charm of the show, to depict those fantastical elements in the same way that we knew them as a child. Alex Hirsch did an amazing job with that. And that's my next segue, is to talk about the creator of Gravity Falls. Before I watched the show, I caught wind of the news in the trivia that Alex Hirsch, the creator, cited his inspiration to make Gravity Falls from a pancake house. No, it wasn't International House of Pancakes. He was traveling through trying to get some ideas for a show he wanted to bring for Disney, and you know as well as I do that if you want to create something, you got to hit the road, and you end up finding inspiration randomly. And he was just eating pancakes in Oregon, and it just hit him. Two siblings going to go visit their sham of a grunkle and encounter supernatural elements the entire summer. And this also went hand in hand with his childhood he had with his sister, who is the inspiration for Mabel. I covered an episode recently on my other show, Paris Passages podcast, to talk about what personal details you can give a story, and that's like one of the best personal ties I've ever heard to be inserted into a story, that we get to see a lot of his antics he had with his sister, you know, minus the giant monsters and Loch Ness stuff and mermaid boys and cloned boy bands. There's so many things about this show. I am so surprised at the ideas that Alex Hirsch came up with. This man was busy. On top of creating the show, he also had a part to play, well, many parts to play in the show with the cast. He voices Great Uncle Stan and Seuss. It's very impressive to know, like, the way that Seuss and Grunkle Stan talk, that it's so vastly different that I cannot tell it apart. There are some people you can tell automatically, yeah, that's the same voice. Not this guy. This guy is like a master of disguise. Knowing how much hard work he put into the show, it really made me feel that I missed out on something great on TV. But that's the wonderful thing about this show, is that now it's becoming, through a resurgence, everyone is picking up on this show now and getting to see how great Gravity Falls is. I have never met someone that hasn't heard of Gravity Falls, whether they have seen it or heard of it. It's getting places. It takes some time for a show to get some places. But at the time that Gravity Falls came out, it wasn't that great for it, unfortunately. I remember a video on Watch Mojo years ago where Gravity Falls made a spot on top 10 worst Disney shows. You know, that's kind of like a slap in the face considering how great Gravity Falls is. Like, that show has episode ratings in the 9-star category, almost 10-star category, which is fantastic. But with the fact that it is a mature show with horror elements, it did rub parents the wrong way and felt that Disney had gone too far to make something too scary for children. And now looking at it, that list almost feels like Gravity Falls has been expunged with the way that it has aged and gotten to the people that have understood, hey, there is more to the show than just scary moments. There is a heart to this show. And that's what kept people coming back. Of all the shows I've watched, besides Star vs. the Forces of Evil, I've never seen a Disney show or film that tackled very serious subjects in a way that you felt the weight of the lesson. Now, I love my Disney movies. A lot of people know that my favorite Disney princess is Ariel, and I will always sing the Aladdin soundtrack in my car, the top of my lungs, but with the way that Dipper and Mabel are layered characters with their own flawed problems, those problems get tackled one at a time. With most TV shows or movies, there's a resolve that feels like, oh, I'm all better. Everything's okay. I have no more problems, when that doesn't happen. There's a new problem that occurs for someone every day when we least expect it, and it has to be tackled. It can't just be shied away. Now, to be fair, there are many Disney films that tackle serious issues and do have a positive giveaway. But sometimes, with the running time that Disney allowed for a certain film, we didn't really get to sit with the resolve long enough, or just sit with the character as they're going through the problem. Sometimes the climax was like, boom, that's it. Okay, you got your lesson, let's get on to the climax, let's get to the happy ending in the credits. Let's get on with the show. Gravity Falls took the time in every single episode to cover a serious topic. Sometimes they even revisited a certain topic. There's an example that I can give where narcissism was a topic that went a couple times in the show. There is an example with the character Pacifica Northwest where her parents are narcissists and they undermine her feelings and make terrible gaslighting gestures against her. Awful! Her parents! And there's another episode where Mabel wants to be the best person, and then a unicorn, yes, a unicorn, gaslights her into thinking she's not a good person. See the example here. On the top of my head, I know that they covered breaking generational trauma, getting over your crush, handling emotions. Like, honestly, you could throw a dart at any certain psychology element, and Gravity Falls handled it with grace and care and a chef's kiss to the issue. You got to have a moment that was talked about in such a way that it felt like you got to have the weight of that lesson, and it was something that maybe you wish someone told you. It's nice that this show coming in at a time for the millennials that are shying away from an upbringing of don't talk about your emotions to a show where all the emotions are brought to the table. But one of my favorite examples is with the characters Dipper and Wendy. And I've already given a lot of examples, but I want to throw this in as an example as well as one of my favorite moments from the show. From the get-go, it's very evident that Dipper has a crush on Wendy due to the fact that she's very adventurous, she's very outgoing, there's a charm to her. I mean, it's hard not to fall in love with Wendy. That's how great this character is. She's admirable, she's emotionally mature for her age, she knows how to tackle any situation, which gives her a perfect spot on the team where everyone has their own unique way to react to the supernatural elements, and with Wendy having a pretty good way to comprehend a lot of the stuff thrown her way, supernatural elements wouldn't be as bad as the other various elements. So she's that kind of a cool character. And she gets a spot on the team where everyone in the Mystery Shack is going to go into a hole in the ground to find the next journal to figure out what the hell's going on with Gravity Falls. And in the episode, the threat is a doppelganger, which I might add is an homage to John Carpenter's The Thing that I just covered in the last episode. This was very ironic. Anyway, there's a part in the plot where a flood happens in this underground lab, and Dipper finds an unconscious Wendy, and he gets very emotional to finally get it off his chest and say, Wendy, I never told you this, but I've been in love with you, and now you're dead and it's all my fault. And you see Dipper get very emotional, and it's like, oh crap, this is not what you wanted for this 12-year-old sweetie of a kid. But meanwhile, the real Wendy's right behind him, and she's like, dude, that's not me. And then a fight breaks out between the doppelganger Wendy and the real Wendy, and I love this moment where Dipper has to find out which one is the real Wendy. The doppelganger Wendy winks at him. The real Wendy does a zipper mouth gesture that is something that has been sprinkled into numerous episodes of the show. Like, it's something that is just between them and their significant dynamic. And everything is well, the doppelganger is captured, everyone escapes with their lives, and they're somehow not traumatized by everything because everyone is just numb to the chaos at this point in Gravity Falls. But at the end of it all, Dipper is embarrassed that he confesses feelings to Wendy, and that's kind of an accurate 12-year-old psyche, that it's not easy to get over something like that, to have an unplanned confession, but Wendy is the one that brings it up. And she addresses Dipper's feelings, and she doesn't say cliche things that he already knows, because there's no point to do that to him. She tells Dipper that she's known that he's had a crush on her, and she knew it from the get-go, and that if they were at the same age, she would have gone for him. And she talks about the good parts of Dipper without having to be like this sugarcoating thing to make someone feel better. Like, she puts down admirable qualities to show that she really does have a lot of respect for Dipper, despite the 2 to 3 year age gap that they have. And it's just a lovely moment to have that exist within a Disney show. I have never really seen a lot of shows where they handled the aftermath of telling your crush that you're in love with him / her / them, and sometimes it just doesn't end very well and people go their separate ways. Wendy assures Dipper that this won't affect their friendship at all, and that she will always have adventures with him. Super sweet. I think I would have to say, with the way that Gravity Falls took on serious topics, it marries very well with the supernatural route that the show takes, that you can still feel the emotional weight, but you can also feel the thrill and the adventure of the supernatural elements within the town of Gravity Falls. Like I mentioned, every time I watch this show, I find something new that I didn't realize before with a certain part of the backstory, maybe a tiny little Easter egg that I missed that really brings this town to life. And I mention that because look at a show like Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks has often been cited as a show that you can watch over and over, and you'll find different things that you learn about the townsfolk, maybe some clues that were there, that you just keep going through in the 2-season run, with the addition of whatever happened in 2017, because I didn't watch that yet. But the reason I mention that is because David Lynch's work did have an impact on Gravity Falls. I mentioned earlier how this show is like supernatural for kids. But to the core of it, this is like a giant love letter, a 2-season giant love letter to David Lynch. There are so many sprinklings of David Lynch's work that is honored in this series. There's a great example that I can give is in the episode The Hand That Rocks the Mabel. I love that title so much. And there's an episode where Mabel and one of the other antagonists named Gideon go on a date. And the restaurant looks just like one of the scenes from an episode of Twin Peaks. Just like exactly the same. Like the same zigzag white pattern on the floor and the walls. And it's like, whoa, that's such a wonderful detail. I would never think in a million years something like David Lynch would be referenced in a Disney show. If you were to make a Venn diagram and have one side with Twin Peaks and one side with Gravity Falls to list the differences, I can assure you there's not going to be too much in those big circles, because the middle part of the similarities is going to be crammed with how much Gravity Falls and Twin Peaks has in common, with having a skeptic and curious male character. There's an oddity to the town. I should say a charming oddity to the town. There are characters with very interesting names, like there's the log lady from Twin Peaks. And then in Gravity Falls, there is a character named Lazy Susan because of her lazy eye. Log Lady and Lazy Susan both have backstories as to why their names are so odd, and damn does it deliver. I can definitely see where Alex Hirsch got a major inspiration with Twin Peaks, that you can play around a mystery, but then to have more of a mystery with the townsfolk itself, as there's a continual journey through Twin Peaks, just like there's a continual journey through Gravity Falls. Questions come up with the supernatural elements, but then questions also come up to the townsfolk that may or may not know about the supernatural elements. Everywhere you go is a mystery, and I just love that. And with the way that Gravity Falls takes a major inspiration from David Lynch, Alex Hirsch did ask David Lynch if he would like to play the role of the villain Bill Cipher. And Alex Hirsch had said that a lot of Bill Cipher's mannerisms and uniqueness is based off of David Lynch. And he said, I'd be honored if you would play the character of Bill Cipher. David Lynch's response to the offer was telling Alex Hirsch that he was honored to be approached about the character, but he's just too busy with his schedule to take the time to voice the character. And he went on to tell Alex Hirsch, "You are more than welcome to do an impression of me, though." And so, it's kind of funny to have to see that the major villain of this show, that has been said to be one of the greatest villains that Disney has ever had, is just an impression of David Lynch. There are many villains we've had in Disney history that are based off real people, or they're an amalgamation of different people, but a specific director, that's kind of rare to see, that a movie director is the inspiration for the character, and thus like a major inspiration for a majority of the world building behind Gravity Falls. It's one of those rare things that you can say that a creator didn't take from another creator and was virtually fully inspired to just go on the cusp of the idea of a town full of oddities. And I love that. I'll admit myself, I have taken a creative liberty from David Lynch myself for my book Inglorious Inc. to also call upon that interesting idea of having a town where nothing makes sense, but the nonsense makes sense. But as much as I love the fact that David Lynch has a major inspiration on this show, I also love the fact that the entire show is just a whole chock full of movie and TV references. And for someone like me, that lives and breathes with film history, this is just up my alley. I love the fact that Alex Hirsch was so creative with the way he utilized film references. And I'm going to pull it up on my phone so that way I can read a majority of the episodes that were clever with the way that they mentioned some of these films. Here we go. That was a very fast look up. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to go from season 1 to season 2, and I'm just going to name off the ones that are very clear reference to film. There's episode 4, which I previously mentioned, which was The Hand That Rocks the Mabel, which is a reference to The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Never thought in a million years that a Rebecca De Mornay thriller was going to be a reference to a children's show. And There's another one for episode 8 called Irrational Treasure. It's a reference to National Treasure. That is perfect. Here's another one called The Time Traveler's Pig. The Time Traveler's Wife. It's perfect. And there is another one called Land Before Swine. Land Before Time. Without the dinosaurs you cry after. And then in season 2, we have Seuss and the Real Girl, which is a reference to a very underrated, heartwarming film called Lars and the Real Girl. I highly recommend that episode. It's absolutely amazing. Little gift shop of horrors. Come on, Little Shop of Horrors. That's perfect. The Stanchurian Candidate, which is a reference to the film The Manchurian Candidate. I loved the way they utilized that. That was just, I sat there like this show is too smart for its own good. I love it. The Last Mabelcorn, in reference to the very underrated animated film The Last Unicorn. And the last one is an episode called Blendin's Game. And don't quote me on this because I haven't really looked into it, but that has to be a reference to Ender's Game, since they both have a sci-fi vibe, and they might not have the same exact plot, but there are some similarities of Blendin's Game to Ender's Game, so just thought I'd throw that one in the mix. And that is all the references I see for the 2 seasons, but not only are the titles a reference to a film, but there's some clever utilization into some of the episodes themselves with making a play on pop culture. There's a part in the episode Scarioke where Mabel goes through the songs that she wants to do for karaoke, and a lot of them are right on the nose. The songs and band names mentioned in this episode made me laugh so hard I think I permanently damaged my lungs, and I'm okay with that. In the episode, Mabel goes through the list of songs that she wants to do for karaoke with Stan and Dipper. She goes through Andra, which is a reference to Sandra. We Built This Township on Rock and Roll, which is a nod to the song by Starship called We Built This City. Oh my god. They really tapped into a time capsule of the 80s, and to have that introduced to the millennials, even though I myself grew up on so many different songs from what my mom showed me, but to actually have a show go out of its way to pick some certain songs that don't really have a strong enough echo that now people get to find the reference and go, oh, that's a person back from the 80s. That's lovely. I love a show that will push something else to give it new life and have it and create a resurgence for a song, a show, a movie, and I love it for that. But the biggest of them all, and I promise this will be the last time I reference the references in Gravity Falls, but I can't not mention it because it has been cited as something hysterical, is the love and affection that Dipper has for a band called Baba, which is a play on the band ABBA. Oh my god, that is every flavor of hysterical. I love that. They even go so far to make a major nod, and they say Icelandic pop duo Baba. Oh my god, right on the nose. They even go so far to reference the famous song Dancing Queen as Disco Girl. It's literally the same thing, and I love that so much. In the episode Dipper versus Manliness, that is where the ABBA references are. Having it so early in this show, that is the tone you're going for. The humor is clever in this show. But the other thing that's clever in this show are the guest stars. I could not be okay with myself if I didn't mention the amount of guest stars that are in this show. I don't know if I can name them all on top of my head, but I'm gonna try. It's gonna be a lightning round. In the episode Headhunters, Coolio, God rest his soul, and Larry King, God also rest his soul, make an appearance as wax figurines of themselves. I still can't believe they got Coolio and Larry King to voice a wax statue of themselves. I love that. It's a nice way of going out of your way to introduce some people that are not really in the knowledge of many little kids, but they get to be introduced solely because of Gravity Falls. And there's another one top of my head that I could think of. Nathan Fillion plays Pacifica Northwest's father. That was a different turn for me, but I liked the way that he played that role. There's Jennifer Coolidge, who voices Lazy Susan, even though she's not a guest star, and she does have a reoccurring role on the show as the lovable, cat-obsessed waitress. But she's so great in this show, and I love her for that. When I first saw the character of Lazy Susan, I was sitting there like, yeah, that's definitely got to be the nail tech from Legally Blonde, even though I didn't know her name until, honestly, recently with her work she did on the White Lotus. But it's wonderful that Gravity Falls has a wonderful part to play on her resume. And I have two more that I want to reference because, honestly, I think I'd run out of time if I just kept going. I can't not mention J.K. Simmons in the role as Stan's twin. That was perfect. Of all the roles I've ever heard or seen J.K. Simmons in, this is my favorite. J.K. Simmons is no stranger to the small screen. It's not his first rodeo being a part of a television production, as the man can easily put himself in any production, just with his charm and professionalism. But watching him in Oz, and then watching him as the character in Gravity Falls, it's like, I believe it, but I'm telling you, that man's not human with how he is able to make these iconic characters. He can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. And seeing the range that he can do, it's amazing to go from a insane prison leader, a wholesome scientist, or a guy yelling at Peter Parker telling him that his pictures are crap. I have a lot of things that I love that he's done, but the way that he played the role of Stan's twin, the real Stanford, spoiler, he owned this role. He did so great playing a character that is the perfect foil to Dipper. And I love that. His inclusion on the show is amazing. Even though the character itself is written to perfection, but the way that J.K. Simmons just filled in everything with the way that character was made, oh, it just makes it perfect. No one else could play that character but J.K. Simmons. Whew, man. Oh gosh, that's how powerful it is. If you've ever gotten the chance to watch Gravity Falls, I'm telling you right now, there is no going back for other roles that you will see J.K. Simmons in. Like, this is kind of rivaling Whiplash. Just saying. And the last I want to say is actually a cameo. But I feel like this is the perfect way to end this segment. On the last episode of Gravity Falls, this is not a spoiler, when Dipper and Mabel are going home at the end of the summer, the bus driver that picks them up is voiced by Kyle MacLachlan. And I mentioned a little show earlier called Twin Peaks. Kyle MacLachlan is the star of Twin Peaks who played Dale Cooper. Look at that irony. David Lynch was unable to voice the role of Bill Cipher, but we got someone of equal importance into the world of David Lynch's series in the last episode of Gravity Falls. Isn't that just a wonderful bookend? But there's one thing that I thought about just now. I talk a lot on this show about how a cast can impact the story if it's a perfect cast. But it doesn't get talked enough about if a certain actor is following the legacy of their parent who's also an actor. Sometimes it's a hit or miss when it comes to a child of an actor. You know, probably could just go ahead and say nepotism baby. If they're going to have the same style as their parent when they get into acting, or if they're going to carve something out for themselves. I believe it can be a little bit of both. There are many acting families I've read about where I can definitely tell, yeah, they're inspired by their parent, and I can see where, like, the style comes from. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's very honorable and admirable. And this kind of shocked me when I found out that the man that voices Dipper Pines is Jason Ritter, the son of John Ritter. Now, for those out there that don't know who that is, you may have accidentally seen this man and just didn't know that that's who it is. John Ritter was the funny man of the 70s, and he played numerous characters that were straight-laced and found themselves in screwball situations. He did that for Three's Company, Problem Child, Bad Santa. The list goes on. And now here's his son also playing characters that are straight-laced, getting into screwball situations and find some way out of it. But the way that Jason Ritter brought a lot of emotion to the character, but I can still also see the style of acting that his father did. And it's lovely to see that that is still making its way into his acting abilities. And even though I don't know Jason Ritter personally, but I think it's kind of nice that there's an echo of John Ritter's career with the way that Jason Ritter has carried on after his father. And I just think that's lovely. I might be rambling about this, but I just couldn't help but think about that when I found out that Jason Ritter is the son of John Ritter. And seeing like the parallels of the characters that they both played, it's kind of a beautiful thing to see. So the last bit that I want to mention before I could go on too long about this show, because I gotta leave a little bit of room so I can talk about the show in the future on the Screen Queen. But I love that this show wasn't afraid to take risks, and it certainly paid off. This show conquered many themes that I mentioned earlier with generational family trauma, narcissism, and it wasn't afraid to take a venture away from the usual tropes that you saw with storytelling. You could squint and say it's like Disney storytelling or not, but in general, where you have a conflict, sometimes you can predict the plot if someone is going to do exactly what you think is happening. And then Gravity Falls takes a 360 where you don't see that happening. The greatest example that I can give is in the episode Not What He Seems, which is the second highest rated episode in Gravity Falls with a 9.8. That should tell you a lot about how impressed people were with this episode. It's 10 out of 10 everywhere. It's absolutely amazing, and it's the episode that many people have cited as the best episode of Gravity Falls. You know, the middle marker of the second season is regarded as the best episode that almost counts out the 3-part finale near the end. And this is why. This is a spoiler if you have not seen Gravity Falls. Everything up into that episode, there has been a mystery surrounding Stan as to why he runs a sham of a shop where everything is basically making fun of the paranormal and oddities, yet he himself has a secret passageway where he is diving into something that goes beyond time and space. He's working on something, so in a way, he has to put up some front that he doesn't believe in that stuff. He calls it hooky dooky nonsense, and then meanwhile he's like, I'm trying to work on something here that could save everything. However, there's a risk factor to what Stan is doing, that with the portal he's opening could very well be the end of the world. I mean, there's been FBI agents on his trail. There's Dipper, who is at fault with the person he respected, knowing my uncle's going to open up a door and everything could go to hell in a handbasket. And this really challenges the dynamic of these tight 4 characters between Seuss, Mabel, Dipper, Stan. And at the very end of it, when Seuss is coming by, Seuss has a change of character and he becomes very admirable, where he goes, I'm sorry, Mr. Pines, but I gotta protect these little dudes. Basically saying, I love you and I respect you, but I have to do the right thing and protect these children. Like, you know, a lot of heroism comes up front, but there's a lot of questions going through of like, well, what's gonna happen? because Mabel is at the center. She has her hand near the button that can stop everything, and she's being yelled at by Stan and Dipper, both saying opposite things, with Dipper saying, "Close the door, Mabel, you can't do it," and then Stan is like, "Please, leave the door open." And then she looks back and forth, and she is torn because she loves her family so much. And then she just lifts her arms up and just goes, "I trust you, Grunkle Stan." And this moment of Mabel closing her eyes and putting her arms up as she just floats in the suspended gravity, ironically, a show called Gravity Falls. Now, gravity has no meaning. She just gives up completely to her decision and doesn't know if she has saved the world or if she's ended the world. Like, that heavy decision weighed on the cutest, innocent, positive character. So much emotion goes into that moment. That moment has been recreated in fan art for how people felt about that decision in the plot of Gravity Falls. When have you ever seen a show, a movie, or any story that had a conflict like that, where you really don't know what's going to happen? You still live in the mystery of Gravity Falls. The decision that Mabel makes is a decision that you feel along with her, that you accept her decision, that whatever happens, happens. If the world ends, the world ends. If the world doesn't end, the world doesn't end. I've never seen a show where there wasn't an immediate outcome, that you still had to sit with what's going to happen. The plot of Gravity Falls has you at the edge of your seat going, okay, what's going to happen? What is the outcome? They stretch it out for an ungodly amount of time in the best way possible. I've never seen a story that would take a turn like that, to take a 360 and then take another 360 and then do another 360, where I'm like, I'm not okay. I don't know where I am. I don't know what happened to me. Like, you feel like you went on a wild ride with that episode. Oh my lord. As much as I do love a majority of Gravity Falls, and I have a whole bunch of episodes that I love, this is the one that I have to agree on is the best episode, because it's the pinnacle of what changes the rest of the show. Everything that happens in Gravity Falls is because of this moment right here. This is what you've been waiting for to lead up to it, and then how everything descends from there into the madness. And it's just, it's an amazing wild ride that you never want to get off, but then at the same time, like I said, you can rewatch the show, so you just get back on the ride, and you still go through the emotional roller coaster of what happens. I've said this before about the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that you could watch that movie over and over and over again, it still feels like the very first time. The humor, the horror, the emotion, everything in this show is so powerful that you want to experience it again. The way that all of the characters are played to perfection will still make me laugh every time. I will still have tears in my eyes at the most emotional toil of moments that still gets to me. That is the beauty of Gravity Falls. And with that note, I'm going to have to cap off this episode. I wish I could keep going. I really do. But I'd like to leave some room in the future to talk more about Gravity Falls, and maybe even have a couple of my friends on to talk about it. But thank you so much for being here for this episode. I really enjoyed taking the time to talk about Gravity Falls. I don't have to have an excuse, honestly, to talk about Gravity Falls, but it was nice to do this episode. But with that said, it is time to find out what the next episode is going to be on the Halloween series of The Screen Queen. So here we go. If you're new here, welcome. You've been through an emotional roller coaster, and I appreciate you for that. I have a system where I put a whole bunch of random pieces of paper in a container, and we both find out what the next episode is going to be on The Screen Queen. I can't even, talk anymore. I think I've exhausted myself from this episode. So let's find out together. Here we go. Let me mix this up really good. Alrighty, I got one. Oh wait, there's several pieces stuck together. What are you? Tell me your secrets. What are you? Oh my god! Oh my god. Well, this is a treat. Oh my gosh. So, I hope you guys are ready for sparkly vampires that end up becoming tortured lighthouse keepers. The next episode of the Halloween series on the Screen Queen is The Lighthouse. Yes! Oh man, it's been a while since we've had like a new movie on here. Because, I keep it with the classics mostly, and that's usually what ends up spitting out as the classics, but this is nice. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to catch up with me in between uploads, you can find me on my Instagram at the Queen of the Scream if you want to talk about Gravity Falls and cry together. If you want to see the funny movie-related content that I post up on TikTok, you can find me at the Mystical Space Witch. And if you're interested in my book series Inglorious Inc., you can find it in the description box. Thank you so much for being here. Have a happy fall, and don't forget your grappling hook. You never know when you might need one. You all take care now. This is your Screen Queen signing off. Bye-bye!